P-Tunes Beats.
Ken Weezer.
Welcome back to the KO'd Convo, and we're taking a bit of a different route this week. You know, we had a lot of different guest sports uh, people. You know, we got a bunch of filmmakers on. Now we're switching over to the music industry, and I have a very exciting guest for you today. My man JerzeySon's is here. Our buddy Will Fairbanks hooked us up. Um, he is Nigerian-American, came out with his big album in 2020 called Native Son. So we're definitely going to talk about that because your range is absolutely incredible. But other than that, Jersey, how are you, brother?
I'm good. It's amazing being here today. I'm glad that you enjoy my sound. Like once you went back to Native Son, I was like, oh yeah, we about to have a really good conversation. So again, I'm just grateful to be here today, and I'm excited.
Well, yeah, I mean, I tell you, when Will was on my podcast, not too many episodes ago, he mentioned your name, and he was like, you know, the guy in the video, the Snow in the City video, which was amazing. He was like, yeah, shout out JerzeySon. So I looked you up, and I didn't know you spelled your name with a Z instead of an S, so I was super confused at first.
Yeah.
But I looked you up, and then all of a sudden, two tracks really hit me that I was just bumping in the car. It was obviously Callin, which is a huge smash hit, and the visual is going to come out soon. So I hear. And then Immigrant Dreams, that the flow of that track just completely like changed it up. And you're just like, this one's for that kid. And all of a sudden it just hits you. And it was like, oh my God. All right. All right. I like this guy. I like it a lot. So yeah, I've been listening to a lot of you up until now. But it seems like just listening to the lyrics, a lot of what you preach and a lot of what you create about is based off your life experiences. No?
Yeah, it is. So I grew up between Nigeria and between the States. And so that gave me such a big perspective of what it means to live in two different countries. And when I was in Nigeria, my only exposure to the West was when I would go to my aunt's house in the UK. So I was shuttling back and forth between that experience, right? And so when I came to the States, I came back to the States actually later half of my sophomore year of high school. And so it was like now adjusting to a whole nother country and a whole different lifestyle and whatnot. And so my forming years and my childhood experience was based off different countries and different experiences. And so when I write and tell the stories, I not only speak of, you know, a black kid in the East Coast, but I also speak, you know, for kids in Nigeria, because I had that same experience. And so my goal with my music is to really be that bridge to connect, you know, the West and Africa, and really bring the diaspora together. So that's where you hear my music.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty important how we mentioned the cultural engagement of sounds, how you have sort of these different sounds from different places, like the West African sounds. And I think it was Callin that was just featured on MTV, right?
Yeah. So Callin just got featured on MTV Base. You know, it's the channel for West Africa. So, you know, it's the beginning part of the process. And so, you know, God willing, it does really well in that market, and it makes its way over to Europe and so on and so forth.
That's amazing. That's amazing, man. Really putting yourself out there. So talk to me about your creative process. Are you one of those people that is whose mind is always churning, just always looking for new stuff, always, being creative, being imaginative, things of that nature?
So my friends make fun of me, the fact that like I'm that kid that if we're in a car, you play a record, no matter who the artist record is, I just jump on and start freestyling. If I love the record, I start freestyling. So you could be in the car and the record might have just like a nice little beat and the guy's going off and I'm just in the car. I'm like, hold on, let me jump on this right quick. So for me, a lot of times, when it comes to song structure and how I approach songs and records, I fall in love with the beat first and then the melodies come. And, so if I don't fall in love with the beat, then I don't form any melodies around it, right? And so, if the beat is fire, then I form these melodies, then I'm able just to fill in the gaps and just really give you, these melodies that just make your head move and groove from there.
Yeah, I was trying to I saw your like Facebook page or whatever, and there was one video on there of you. It was like you and a bunch of friends in like a restaurant or whatever, and then it pans to you and you're just rapping, and and your friends are like hyping you up, and then everybody else in the restaurant's like, I don't know what's going on.
But that's literally how I am. Like, you put me in any pocket, I just, I'm ready. For me, it's the love of music and love of sound, right? So when I hear sound, I fall in love with it. It's like a marriage to the art in a sense. And, we're all gifted in different ways, I believe. But for me, when it comes to art, music is just one of those mediums I'm able to use to express my giftings.
Has that love of music always been consistent throughout your lifetime? Like it
Man,
started as a young boy?
It's been there since I came out the womb. The crazy thing about music for me, music is the air I breathe, right? It's this thing that no matter how much I try to get away from it, it keeps finding its way back to me, right? So I'll give you some backstory. So like when I was 10, I was featured in one of the local articles in Jersey for my poetry, and that was part of my song structure. I remember when I was in school in Nigeria, I was always in a lot of these competitions, singing and stuff like that. And when I came back to school in the States, my 10th grade teacher, Miss Veda, English teacher, I remember we're there and she gives one of our assignments was actually to write poetry based off like modern day hip hop. Like she was one of those teachers, kind of like from what's that movie? What's that movie with the teachers trying to engage with the kids? So she's like one of those teachers who's like that. Freedom Writers, something like imagine a movie like that, right?
Yeah.
And she was really engaged. And so I remember I had this homework assignment, and the assignment was like, "Yo, you guys had to write your own X, Y, and Z." So I'm thinking like, okay, she's older, she don't know nothing about no hip hop, So I'd use like the first 4 lines of Tupac. I see no change. Can a brother get a little piece? So I'd use that in my poem, and then she comes back and she's like, this isn't yours. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you don't know nothing about no Tupac. Like, and she's looking at me crazy, G. And so she's like, yo, you in detention. So I'm in detention, right? And for like that whole
For
week.
that?
Yeah, bro. Because she was trying to teach me not to plagiarize. And I remember being there. And that was when I learned the lesson of, in order to achieve greatness, don't take shortcuts. You know what I'm saying? Whenever you try to take shortcuts, you miss out on the details. And whether it's intentional or not intentional, you might actually pull things that are not original. But if you're original in your process and you don't skip any steps in the process and don't take those shortcuts, the art that you create just becomes beautiful, right? And so that was the whole concept. So she had us in there, every single day. She's like, all right, you know what? I know you like Kanye. I know you like X, Y, and Z. So imagine if you're writing rap stanzas, but writing in poetry. So that's actually where I started practicing my songwriting, was in detention in high school, And so you take that to where like I came out singing first, and most of my guys in high school, they're all spitters, and because they were spitters and because that was a big thing for them, I remember like just hearing them just going off in these freestyle sessions, right? And I was singing, I was like, nah, bro, you got to spit too. And so so that's when I started learning, how do I, if I'm not the spitter, but how do I learn how to add melodies and music, to the rapping that's going on, right? And that was a big key part of my development at an earlier age. And so you take that exposure to music, earlier in high school, and then you go through life, I go through college, and I keep trying to jump back into making music, trying to jump back into it, but timing didn't allow for it, right? And then I go into corporate. And I think as being in corporate, a lot of times people are able to excel at things that are not their calling, right? So you might be in a position or a place in life that's not part of your destination, but you're able to excel in that space. And that's what happened for me. So I was like, you know what, maybe this art piece of music is really not part of my calling and whatnot. But the gag was that, you know, so being in medical devices, you have these sales meetings. And so at one of the sales meetings, my manager was like, yo, he can sing, he can for real. So they have me singing for like 250 people at this sales meeting. And it's like, oh, wow, you know? And so, you know, you start having those conversations with people like, yo, like, you're super talented. Why are you here? And so that becomes a conversation I'm having with most people on a regular basis. Like, yo, you're talented. Why are you not using your gift? I remember vividly, like, it was like a couple years ago, I was covering this field account. I'm driving in there, and, you know, it's an account I've been working, this hospital I'm working with, and the doctor, we were just talking. He's like, yo, like, you're creative. I don't know what, like, just seeing you work here, it's cool, but I could tell you're naturally creative. Like, why don't you, you know, do something with your creativity? You know, why don't you, like, really go after it? It's like, you're young, you know, go after it. And if it doesn't work out, you can always come back, but this will always be here. You need to really start building yourself up, you know, as a creative and living within your passion and your calling. And even then I still don't listen, right? And it wasn't until my grandmother died that I had to ask myself those questions, like what am I doing? You know, like, what am I really here for? Like, am I really walking in my calling? Am I really utilizing my gifts to its fullest capacity? You know, when I leave this earth, can I really say that I've really used everything that was put in me? And I couldn't really answer that. And so here I am, just maximizing my gifts and really trying my best to make an impact.
Yeah, and would you say you didn't listen because you were kind of afraid to put yourself out there, and were you kind of afraid of how people would react? Because I think, and Will and I talked about this too, I think a lot of today's culture is based around what people think of how people react when they find out whatever people think of them. So was it a sense of that, or was it just like, I'm comfortable enough here that I don't want to take that risk?
I'd say it's a mixture of both, right? So comfortability comes from, you get tired of struggling. You know, you know, you're happy. So was I tired of struggling in a sense? Yes, I was. You know, so I was a little comfortable, but the fear of not being well received wasn't really there per se, but it was the fear of the unknown, right? You know, like,
Sure.
what happens now that I go down this journey? Like, what's going to happen to my life? Will I get there? And how long will it take for me to get there? You know what I'm saying? Or like, what will I learn along the way? So it's the fear of that, because, you know, when you're just in a regular 9-to-5 corporate structure, you have an idea of what the map looks like. We're in this creative space where you're like, I'm really trying to live off my art and live off the aspect of, you know, changing lives with the art that I'm creating. That's an unknown. That's a variable you can't control. You can't control what happens or where it takes you. And that fear, sometimes for a lot of creators, I feel like we feel like that, like, yo, like, where is it going to take us? How far is it going to take us? What's going to change in our lives? How are we going to have to adapt? Are we even ready to adapt? And so that's the fear that kind of went through me.
No, that makes complete sense. Obviously, it's a scary thing when you're taking a risk such as that. But obviously, it's paying off for you now, my friend. I mean, uh, featured on MTV now. God, you're going up, my brother. You're going up.
Man, it's a journey. It's a journey. That's all it is. It's a journey. Like, I'm running. That's all it is right now. I'm just running.
I want to take a step back real quick and talk about how in high school you had your quote unquote spitters and you were the one singing. I think it's interesting to find out now how in your own music you're singing and you're rapping. So you're incorporating both those talents. Was that something like when you really started making records seriously and stuff that you wanted to do?
Yeah. So, like, you know, for me, like, if you listen to my music, you realize, like, when it comes to singing, my melodies just go crazy. Like, I'm just in these different pockets, and then when I'm rapping, you're like, oh wow, he can really rap. He's in those pockets as well. And you know, in order for me to develop those skills, one skill had to be dormant for another while. You get what I'm saying? So, like,
Yeah.
for me, I would say throughout childhood, throughout high school, throughout probably early college, singing was a big thing for me, just singing, so like I learned how to sing on hip hop instrumentals because everybody was spitting around me. They're playing these instrumentals. I'm like, all right, let me go crazy with these melodies to try to get inside before, melodic rapping became like a genre accepted form in a sense. You feel me? And so that's a pocket I practiced. And on the flip side, when I got to college, everybody was spitting, but I was like, you know what? I've been around enough spitters. I can really do this for real. And so I actually stopped singing for a while and was just rapping more. So I was rapping more for a couple of years and just picking up that skill and really fine tuning that skill to where I was like, all right, you know what? Now I can blend both. And now I can transition easy, in and out between the two, So like when you hear Callin, I'm transitioning in and out of singing and rapping, and it's just like, it's handles. You feel me? Like even when you hear Immigrant Dreams, you're hearing that cadence switching out. And at this point, I just really want to make great music. That's it. I want to make great music. So if a record requires me to do more singing, I'm gonna do that. If a record requires me to do more rapping, I'm in there spitting bars. But regardless, the product itself is gonna be a vibe, and that's the energy I'm bringing.
Yeah, and let's talk about that great music real quick. Obviously, Native Son came out just this past year here, and it's pretty spectacular just because you have so much range on the songs, from like Immigrant Dreams, and then you have where it's more singing based, and then all of a sudden you have a song called like what's it called? Pull Up. That's what it's called, where immediately you just like it hits you straight from the jump. But I want to start at the interlude, obviously, and why choose that to really start the album in? Because you speak a completely different language. Obviously, I can't understand it or really get it. But what was the mindset behind creating that type of interlude for an album like this?
I would say, the interlude itself spoke to two different aspects of who I am, right? So there's two interludes. There's one Oga's interlude where it's my auntie speaking about my life when I was a kid. So that, my auntie, she lives actually in the UK. And so that's the auntie I see when I was a child. And, they would always make the reference like, hey, when you're a child, like you were always just willing to give everything to everybody. And that's who I've always become. My goal is to not only acquire, some, wealth in a sense, but to be benevolent. I want to give back. I don't want to just hoard my wealth. I want to be in a space where I have wealth, but I'm able to use that wealth to help people and give back and build up communities. And that's something that's who I've always been as a child. And, and the second interlude, which is really Native Son, really speaks to the aspects like, yo, this is what life is crazy. We facing a whole bunch of crazy stuff in life, ups and downs, romance, we're just people and whatnot. And we just got to thrive and keep pushing. So when you hear that interlude, those two aspects speak to not only who I am, but the story of most people. We go through life. We face the ups and downs. We have these stories that from our parents, from our aunties, from our uncles, they remind us of who we are, even though we've gotten too old to forget how we were as children. And the crazy thing is, when you remember how you were as a child, when you hear the stories about how you were as a child, it's not too surprising about how some of those gifts still came with you into adulthood as well.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's still got that inner child in them. Let's be honest. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Like I remember, I used to love like drumming as a kid, and then all of this, like I haven't been very musically talented in the past, but then all of a sudden, like I just got like a big itch again to start drumming again, and I'm just like, dude, where did that come from? And then I realized, oh yeah, this is from my childhood. But yeah, I mean, the album itself is pretty spectacular, and I think are you working on another album coming out later this year too?
Yeah, so I have a question for you.
Yeah,
as a music listener, how did the album make you feel?
oh, it made me happy. It made me ready to go. To be honest, like I tell you, Immigrant Dreams like really made me inspired. Pull Up really hit me hard and what made me want to let go, and then stuff like that, and some of the other tracks as well. I can't remember the names off the top of my head, but Immigrant Dreams that was really inspiring because it really takes you back to the life of that one kid who's never really made his sports team, never really done this, done that, and then but everybody's trying to work for the same thing. I mean, God, I mean, we could just focus on a whole nother episode for Immigrant Dreams. I'll tell you that much. But yeah, I mean, how were you able to balance sort of these different tempos and different styles to fit them into this one album, though? Because don't get me wrong, it was amazing.
I got to put my phone on the charger. I got a lot to break down with you on this one. So
no, you're all good. You're all good. So we were talking about Native Son, and while we had that quick break, I was able to remind myself of all the tracks because I listen to everything. I just can't remember all of the names. No Go is a really popular one just among the listeners. That one was very popular. But as I was asking you, Jerz, how were you able to balance all of the different tempos and styles in each song to really create this amazing project?
I think for me, it was when I hear a super dope playlist, right? What are emotions I want to feel? Well, I want to feel some mellow vibes. I want to turn up a little bit, but I want to relax. But at the end of the playlist, I want to feel like I gotta go, right? And so creating playlists or curating playlists, that was something that with my tech startup Groove Drive, that's something that we really did. That we were super intentional about how we put a playlist together, how does it sound? And so as a musician, I took that approach when it comes to, arranging a project. When you hear like Lights in Paris, it sets the tone, it gets you inspired. You're like, okay, I'm here. And then you hear the interlude and it goes into Wake Up and you're like, oh, Wake Up is a whole just like punches in your mouth. You're like, okay, I'm up now. And then you get No Go, and No Go just gives you that energy that you don't even realize that you need. And then you have the interlude again, which now makes you think. And Immigrant Dreams comes on and it punches you in the mouth, and then Pull Up just gives you this full, piece of energy. So if you pay attention to it, it's really like a roller coaster, but you're going up. You're having your peaks and your valleys, just like life is. So I wanted to be extremely relatable that, as you're driving through it, as you're listening to it, you're having those peaks and valleys. But it just set a precedent to really let you know, like, hey, like when it comes to making music, you should not be prepared to expect the same thing from JerzeySon's at all times. I'm gonna give you a different vibe. I'm gonna give you some up vibes, some downbeat vibes, but either way, you're gonna enjoy the music.
Yeah, and is that sort of, I wouldn't say dangerous, but having such different sounds, obviously coming from your background and things of that nature, would you say that you have a specific sound, or would you say that
I would say my sound is more Afrofusion, and okay. Afrofusion is like, that's that blend of hip hop, Afro beats, and R&B, and so like Native Son 2, which comes out in April, captures that sound. So you really that's where I really dive a little deeper to the Afrofusion sound itself. And so you have those records that lean towards Afro beats heavily. You have those records that are, that have that Afro-Caribbean influence, and that really just gives you those vibes that really curates who JerzeySon's is as an artist.
Yeah, and talk to me about the growth of Afrofusion as a genre since you first started. How has it grown, and how many artists have you really seen, including yourself, that have really popped up on the Afrofusion scene?
I would say like it's interesting because when you look at the terminology Afrofusion, in some pockets it's described differently, or so like for example, if you're in the UK, you have the Afro swing, and Afrofusion really have that overlap because they are pulling from these elements. Like there's this record last year, even like the Don't Rush record has that elements of Afro swing, or Simba Rover that has that elements. But if you go to Nigeria, you have like Alte, you have the cast like Ladipo, Thames, Buju, Amale, who are making these records that just give you these melodies that are just so carefree, And so for me as an artist, I wouldn't say like I'm in any of those pockets in a sense, but I can say like you can put my records next to those artists, and the vibe never changes. The vibe is continued. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm just trying to make great music that can really, stand the test of time. So regardless of if you are a strong hip hop listener, if you are a strong Afrobeat listener, you can listen to my music and say like, wow, I feel represented, but also the vibes are still secure.
Yeah, and I think Callin is a great example because as you said yourself, Callin is kind of like a track where you can just vibe in any environment, right? It's one of those it's one of those very flexible tracks where you can listen to it anytime, anywhere. I do want to talk about your inspirations in sort of your favorite artists to go off of. But first, I want to talk about Colin in terms of the visuals, because I know you and Will are working like crazy. I mean, you guys are working hard to really get this going, and the teaser just got like, well, I bet it's almost at like 200K views right now.
It's been
It's crazy. That is nuts.
bro. That's off 6 days, fam. I was
6
looking at
days.
it, yo, this is mad. This is mad, bro. I was just like, yo, it's
Yeah, that's nuts. So, in terms of the creative visual process, I mean, have you guys really found like a visual project that really relates and really matches the track?
yeah. So for call, you're talking about for Callin, right?
Yeah, for Colin.
Yeah. Callin is a short film. That's all it is. Callin. When you watch Callin, you will see the elements of the culture there. You also see the elements of things that we love, right? Um, I'm a kid. I'm a child of the '90s, so '90s nostalgia. Even though I wasn't, really an adult in that sense, but those elements you'll see that sprinkled throughout Callin, and just be ready.
Oh, I'm
Honestly,
ready.
just
I'm
be ready.
ready. And every other one of the 200,000 people that's seen it better be ready too.
No, it's so crazy to me that like in 5 days, nearly 200,000 people have watched the teaser.
Yeah, it's absurd.
Like you can't even.
It just must you must just appreciate it like in a whole nother sense now. I mean,
it lets me know that people really want to hear more of the music. They want to see more music. They want to see more content. Like myself and Will, like our promise this year is that we're gonna be on the road. We're gonna make great content. We're gonna make great music. We're going to make great vibes. Like it's kind of like when Goku and Vegeta come together and do that little thing right there, and like it's like it's taking over. Like that's that's that. Like and it's. I think what makes us work really well together is that we're both visionaries. And when you have two visionaries in a room and they're able to align on the same vision, you can't really stop that car. You can't really stop momentum. Momentum is a superpower, and that's a superpower I'm trying to tap into.
yeah, for sure. I mean, geez, man. I mean, 200. I still can't believe it. And I saw your video on Instagram because you were just shocked and you were just like, man, like 120,000. But I do want to talk about some of your favorite lyricists and some of your favorite artists, sort of like all time almost, but some of the artists you take inspiration from. It seems like Tupac is definitely one of them because Tupac got you in detention. It's funny enough is I grew up in the same county as Tupac. I'm from the Bay Area, so his music is he actually like his house is like 2 towns over, and then his high school was like 5 minutes away from my childhood home. So yeah, that music over there, it goes crazy. But so Tupac is obviously one of them, and who else would you say really inspired you?
I would say a couple of artists. Growing up, the artists such as 50 Cent had a big impact just off the fact that like I was in Nigeria when he got big, and his music made it all the way over to Nigeria, and it was so big that in commercials and movies and everything, Get Rich or Die Trying really resonated with the culture and the community in Nigeria. So I was like, yo, I want to have that impact to where no matter where I'm at in the world, my music can resonate. And so, I'd say 50 Cent. Of course, Wayne. Wayne has this. I think one thing that as a music listener and especially as an artist is that Wayne taught us how to attack records. If you really pay attention, Wayne was one of the first guys who can get on any single beat and demolish it. He's on all kinds of beats, playing double dutch. He boxing with the beat, and flowing with different cadences. And for me as an artist, I aspire to get to that level of greatness where I'm able to get on any kind of beat and demolish it and give you a melody or give you a rap cadence that just resonates. So that's, those are artists who really influenced me. Of course, Kanye West, from being able to create diverse sounds and visuals, right? I would say honestly, when it comes to visuals, for me, it shifts though. Then you're looking at like Busta Rhymes, Missy Elliott, Kanye West. These three had some of the most impactful and creative visuals when it comes from a storytelling perspective that even if you wasn't really rocking with the record, you watch the visuals, you're like, wow. And so that's always been my goal, is that when I start putting out more visuals, that you're going to be wowed every single time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to like punch you right in the gut, and you're going to be taken aback at first, right?
Mentality. That's the approach. That's the mentality.
Yeah, and I think all the names you mentioned are all creative geniuses in their own right, even if they do have their crazy moments like Kanye. But
one guy I forgot off the list, and then I didn't get the chance to really dive into. So Labaja, he's a Nigerian artist, and this is before people really made wearing masks popular. He had this mask on, and he had the saxophone, and you see that a lot of his visuals, and it resonated because he had a faceless. He had a faceless artist, but because his attire was so fire and his saxophone was just so smooth, and the instrumentals and the way he had these melodies, you all you could do was just judge the art, And so Labaja, honestly, when it comes to like visuals, I would actually put him number one, and then everybody else would fall within that pocket for me.
Wow. What do you think of like all these mainstream like not rappers and artists of stuff? What do you think of kind of the culture nowadays? Like, what's your take on it if you had to have one big takeaway?
Anything is possible. I think that's like, regardless of whether you like their music or don't like their music, you realize that anything is possible. People are finding different, creative, innovative ways to get into the game, right? Whether it's through TikTok, whether it's through through Instagram and mobilizing, Facebook and Instagram ads, whether it's through just, shows or whether it's through playlisting. There's so many different points of entry into the game. And so when you're watching different people break into mainstream, you're like, oh, wow, I never thought about that. But like, oh, wow, I see how you did that. That's smart. You know what I'm saying? And so people are finding different ways to utilize technology to jump over those gatekeepers and bring their music to you. So I honestly, for all the cats who are coming out of the game right now, and even the cats who've been in the game who are revamping and refreshing themselves, I respect it, and I think just like any player in any major sports league, you're like, man, I'm just glad to be in the game. And for me, I'm just glad to be able to hoop. So that's that.
Yeah. The appreciation is there for sure. Last thing I got for you, the name. How does someone come up with the name JerzeySon with a Z?
Yo, so for me, I've lived in multiple places. I spent some time in the South when I was in school out there. One of my homies was like, yo, bro, like, this is back when everybody was creating Twitter names. And he was like, yo, bro, like, what's your name gonna be? And I was like, man, I don't even know. Like, I'm from Jersey. He's like, yeah, bro, you from Jersey, son. I was like, wait. Oh, yeah, Jersey, son. He's like, what you mean? I said, Jersey, son. You see, I'm from Jersey, son.
Oh my Jersey, God.
Son.
That's it?
So I'm from Jersey, son, and I'm Jersey, son, and put me in the game because I got on a jersey, son. You feel me? So when you get those three aspects, it gives you those three layers of who I am.
Man, yeah, I mean, well, I thought it was gonna be something along the lines of like, yeah, man, I've been to many different places, so it's almost I come from many different places, so it's almost like I'm wearing a bunch of different jerseys, or like, I don't know, but that's all it was, man. JerzeySon, I got it. Well, hey, Jerz, I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to sit down with you and talk for this episode, and I think this is, I mean, you're so insightful, and it's pretty amazing how people who are so creative can really shed light on their whole process and their whole mindset. So it's pretty awesome, and I really thank you. I can't thank you enough for coming on the KO Convo today, my man.
Of course. I'm grateful for you having me on today as well.